This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We end today's show with the first military and intelligence officer to publicly resign over the Biden administration's support for Israel's war on Gaza. Jewish-American Army Major Harrison Mann resigned from his role at the Defense Intelligence Agency after a 13-year career. Harrison Mann joins us now from Washington, D.C. Welcome to Democracy Now! Harrison, if you can go back to November and talk about what drove you to decide to separate from the U.S. military. You're a U.S. Army major who worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency, and explain exactly what your role was and what the DIA does.
Yes, and thank you for having me. So just in terms of what I was seeing, what drove my decision back in October is even in the first weeks after October 7th, with the start of the Israeli air campaign on Gaza, it was really clear that they were prepared to inflict huge numbers of civilian casualties, which they did, and which are, a trend your last guest described in really heartbreaking detail. So there's very high tolerance and willingness to inflict civilian casualties, which we already saw. We already saw the autoimmune response from U.S. and Israeli adversaries or Iranian proxies in the region, with I think the first Houthi attacks starting in mid-October. And really beyond those risks and the humanitarian cost, it was really clear both at the national level and from what I was hearing from the senior leadership in my community that our support for Israel was going to be really unshakable and unconditional, no matter how many people they killed and how they conducted the war. And my job at the time was assistant to the director of basically the Middle East and Africa office for the agency, who was also the official who oversaw the Israel crisis response. So I was very well placed to understand some of the higher level discussions happening about the war and about U.S. support to the war, and that really left me feeling hopeless that we were going to condition or moderate our aid or our support in any way. My Jewish background, influenced both my service and my decision to leave. I have a very distinct memory of several years ago going to the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial Museum in Israel on a trip that was actually sponsored and hosted by the IDF. And you go through that museum and you see all these sites of the Holocaust victims, and then at the end, there's this giant blow-up photo that I think is still there, showing a lot of U.S. Army soldiers interspersed with Holocaust camp survivors. And they're attending a service led by a U.S. Army rabbi after their camp has been liberated. And that, I think, seeing that photo, which I hadn't seen before, was like one of my proudest moments of my service, understanding that I got to wear the same uniform and be in the same army as the men who liberated that camp. And today, seeing photos of charred bodies and burnt corpses and starved, emaciated children that are from, 2023, 2024, not the 40s, it's impossible not to make that connection. And I guess it forced me to realize that that's what I was contributing to in the same uniform, instead of saving those people. And so I think the situations are not perfectly analogous, but the moral logic was very clear to me.